Case number 1. Rudy Eugene. In May 2012, a man named Rudy Eugene committed an act of public violence so profoundly bizarre and savage it shocked the world. The setting was not a dark alley, but the sun-drenched, heavily trafficked MacArthur Causeway in Miami on a Saturday afternoon. His victim was 65-year-old Ronald Papo, a homeless man. What transpired was an 18-minute nightmare witnessed by countless passing motorists, an attack that defied all rational understanding and would earn Eugene the grim, media-driven nickname of the Miami Cannibal. Eugene did not use a gun or a knife. His weapon was his own body. After violently beating Ronald Papo, he stripped the man and then proceeded to use his teeth to maul him. Ignoring the horrified screams of onlookers and the repeated commands of the first police officer to arrive on the scene, Eugene remained fixated on his gruesome task. He continued to bite and tear at Papo's flesh until the officer was forced to fire his weapon, killing Eugene. The aftermath was a scene of unspeakable horror. First responders discovered that approximately 80% of Ronald Papo's face had been literally chewed away. Papo was rushed to the hospital, but succumbed to his catastrophic injuries. In the immediate aftermath, the public and media scrambled for an explanation. The prevailing theory pointed to so-called bath salts, a class of synthetic drugs infamous for triggering extreme, violent psychotic episodes in users. This narrative provided a semblance of a reason for the unreasoning violence. However, the official toxicology report released by the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office delivered a stunning and confounding twist. The extensive analysis found only one substance in Rudy Eugene's system: marijuana. There were no traces of bath salts, cocaine, LSD, methamphetamines, or even alcohol. This pivotal fact transformed a sensational crime into a permanent, unsettling mystery. Without the clear trigger of a powerful narcotic, authorities were left with a hollow clinical diagnosis: acute psychosis of unknown origin. The question of what, precisely, happened inside Rudy Eugene's mind that afternoon has never been answered. Was it the catastrophic flare-up of a severe, undiagnosed mental illness? Could it have been an extraordinarily rare and violent paradoxical reaction to marijuana? Or was it something else entirely, a sudden and total neurological break with no identifiable precursor? Rudy Eugene's attack stands as a stark monument to the terrifying fragility of the human psyche. It was not a premeditated murder, but a spontaneous, explosive descent into a primal and incomprehensible state. He left behind no manifesto, no warning, and no explanation. Only the indelible image of barbarism on a postcard-perfect bridge. The case is legally closed, but it remains psychologically wide open. The ultimate motive for why a seemingly ordinary man transformed into a monster in broad daylight died with him, leaving behind a chilling void where an answer should be. Case number 2. Gregory Fitzgerald Gibbert. In April 2024, a man named Gregory Fitzgerald Gibbert demonstrated that for some, freedom is not a chance for redemption, but an opportunity to kill again. Just 6 days after being released from a Florida prison, Gibbert committed a murder of shocking brutality. His victim was 37-year-old Andrea Doria dos Passos, a homeless transgender woman who was seeking shelter outside a Miami Beach ballet school. The weapon was a metal pipe. The attack was not a quick act of passion, but a sustained and vicious bludgeoning. Gibbert beat Andrea dos Passos to death with the pipe, leaving her lifeless body on the sidewalk. The violence was so extreme and personal that it pointed to more than a random act. It suggested a targeted rage. Miami Beach police, using security footage and eyewitness accounts, tracked Gibbert down. He was arrested without incident, and during questioning, he made a statement that removed all doubt about his intent. Gregory Gibbert confessed to the murder. Gibbert's recent release highlights a grim and recurring failure within the justice system. He had a long and violent criminal history, yet he was still set free into the community. His prior record did not prevent his release, and within less than a week, that failure culminated in the death of an innocent and vulnerable person. Andrea dos Passos, who faced the daily struggles of homelessness and societal prejudice, met her end not by chance, but by the deliberate action of a man the system had just turned loose. He was charged with second-degree murder and held without bond. While his confession provides a clear legal resolution, it offers no deeper answer to the central, haunting question this case presents. What kind of hatred or compulsion drives a man to hunt down and execute a defenseless stranger with a pipe just days after gaining his freedom? The state of Florida will likely ensure Gregory Gibbert spends the rest of his life behind bars, providing a measure of societal protection and judicial punishment. However, the sentence cannot answer why this happened, nor can it undo the system's oversight that placed a violent offender on a sidewalk where Andrea Dos Passos was trying to rest. Her death is a tragedy, and his release a catastrophic error, leaving a permanent stain on the community that failed to protect her. Case number 3, Nicholas Dion Robinson. In February 2024, a man named Nicholas Dion Robinson turned a vehicle into a weapon and a Miami causeway into a killing ground. His choice to get behind the wheel while intoxicated led to an act of lethal negligence that ended a promising life. The victim was 19-year-old Gabriela Alejandra Rios Flores, a student at Florida International University with her future ahead of her. She was a passenger in a disabled Jeep, stranded and vulnerable on the MacArthur Causeway, when Robinson's car struck them. Robinson was not simply driving over the speed limit. He was racing toward disaster at nearly 100 miles per hour. At that velocity, a car is no longer a mode of transport, but a missile of pure kinetic energy. The impact with the stationary Jeep was catastrophic. Gabriela Flores, the young woman in the passenger seat, suffered fatal injuries and died at the scene. Her life was not taken in a shadowy alley, but on a well-lit bridge, the victim of another person's profound and selfish disregard for human safety. The legal facts are clear and indisputable. Police reports and forensic analysis confirmed Robinson's extreme speed and his intoxicated state. He was not involved in a complex, ambiguous incident. This was a straightforward case of drunk and reckless driving with the deadliest possible outcome. Robinson was arrested and charged with DUI manslaughter and vehicular homicide. The charges reflect the gravity of his decisions to drink, to drive, and to do so at a speed that guaranteed any collision would be fatal. While the court process will determine his formal punishment, it cannot address the void left behind. This case forces a confrontation with a mundane, yet deadly, form of violence that claims thousands of lives each year. Nicholas Robinson did not set out that night to murder a stranger, but his conscious decisions created a scenario where death was a near certainty. Gabriela Flores' life was not ended by a mysterious assailant or a complex plot, but by a dangerously common series of choices. Her death is a stark reminder that a moment of reckless judgment on the road can forever shatter innocent lives, leaving families to grieve and a community to question how such preventable tragedies continue to occur. The wheels of justice will turn for the driver, but they cannot bring back the student whose journey ended on the causeway. Case number 4, Labor Dennis. In 1996, a man named Labor Dennis allowed a jealous obsession to curdle into a cold, calculated double murder. His target was his ex-girlfriend, 22-year-old Monica Lumpkins. But his rage would not be contained to her alone. It would also claim an innocent bystander, 23-year-old University of Miami linebacker Marlon Barnes. This was not a crime of spontaneous passion, but a planned execution carried out with brutal efficiency inside Barnes's own apartment. Driven by fury over the ended relationship, Dennis tracked down Monica Lumpkins. He found her at the North Miami apartment of her friend, Marlon Barnes, a respected athlete with no part in the personal dispute. Armed with a shotgun, Dennis forced his way inside. What followed was a scene of horrific violence. Using the shotgun not as a firearm, but as a blunt instrument, Dennis savagely beat both victims to death. He then fled, leaving 2 young lives brutally extinguished in a space that should have been safe. The investigation, while confronting a gruesome scene, was methodical. Evidence placed Dennis at the location, and the nature of the killings pointed unequivocally to a personal, targeted attack. He was apprehended, tried, and originally sentenced to death for his crimes. However, in a later legal proceeding, his sentence was reduced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This adjustment provided a finality to the legal saga, ensuring he would never walk free again. The case of Labor Dennis is a stark study in the catastrophic fallout of possessive rage. He was not a stranger, but a man known to one of the victims, whose refusal to accept rejection metastasized into homicidal violence. His actions stole the future from two individuals, a young woman seeking to move on with her life, and a promising athlete who was merely offering a friend shelter. While the prison sentence provides a form of societal resolution, it cannot answer the fundamental, haunting question of how one man's jealousy could so completely eclipse his humanity, leading him to snuff out two lives with such deliberate, brutal force. The walls of his prison cell are the end of his story, but for the families of his victims, the tragedy he authored remains an open wound. Case number 5. Jamal Maurice Demons and Cortland Henry. In October 2018, a pact among rising rap artists dissolved into a scene of alleged betrayal and execution-style murder. The suspects are two men, Jamal Maurice Demons, known as YNW Melly, and Cortland Henry, known as YNW Bortland. The victims were their close associates and fellow members of the YNW collective, 21-year-old Anthony Williams, YNW Juvie, and 19-year-old Christopher Thomas Jr., YNW Sock Chaser. What began as a night spent together in a Jeep Cherokee ended with two young men shot dead, and a narrative carefully staged to mislead police. According to prosecutors, Demons and Henry were in the car with the two victims. At some point during the drive in Broward County, both Williams and Thomas were shot multiple times. The alleged perpetrators did not flee the scene immediately. Instead, they are accused of orchestrating a cover-up, driving the vehicle with the bodies inside to a nearby lot, and then positioning the victims to create a false scene. They reported the incident as a drive-by shooting, claiming an unknown assailant in another car had opened fire on them. The investigation, however, quickly unraveled their story. Forensic evidence from the Jeep, specifically the blood spatter and ballistics, contradicted the account of an external attack. The evidence suggested the shots came from inside the vehicle. This critical finding led to the arrest of Demons and Henry, who were both charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Their initial trial in 2023 ended in a mistrial after the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict, forcing the state to prepare for a retrial. This case cuts through the glamour of the music industry to reveal a stark and brutal allegation that fame and alliance were shattered by an act of intimate violence. The core accusation is not of a random act, but of a calculated double homicide followed by a deliberate fabrication. While the mistrial leaves the legal outcome unresolved, the facts presented paint a grim picture of trusted friends becoming alleged executioners. The upcoming retrial will seek a final legal judgment, but it will never fully explain the moment the music stopped and the guns, allegedly wielded by hands that were once considered brothers, opened fire inside that car. The question of what truly happened that night, and why, remains locked in a contentious legal battle, with the only undisputed truth being that 2 young men are dead. Case number 6. Avar Kier and Dorian Taylor. In March 2021, a spring break trip to Miami ended not in fun, but in a predator's trap for 24-year-old tourist Christine Engelhardt. The accused are 2 college roommates, Avar Kier and Dorian Taylor. Their alleged crime was not an impulsive robbery, but a calculated, multi-step assault that ended in death. They are accused of meeting Engelhardt, gaining access to her room at the Yodel and Paradise Plaza, and then drugging, sexually assaulting, and robbing her before leaving her to die. The sequence of events, as detailed by prosecutors, reveals a cold, transactional cruelty. Kier and Taylor allegedly provided Engelhardt with drugs laced with a lethal dose of fentanyl. Once she was incapacitated, they sexually battered her, took her money and belongings, and then abandoned her in the hotel room. Christine Engelhardt was found unconscious and never revived. The Miami-Dade medical examiner ruled her death a homicide caused by acute fentanyl toxicity, poisoning, not an accidental overdose. Her spring break became her final destination. Police work cracked the case through digital evidence. Security footage from the hotel and surrounding areas placed Kier and Taylor with Engelhardt and tracked their movements before and after her death. Their actions on camera, coupled with forensic evidence, formed the basis for their arrest. Both men were charged with second-degree murder, sexual battery, and robbery. The charges reflect the comprehensive nature of the alleged crime, a willing encounter turned into a lethal violation for profit. This case strips away any pretense of a drug deal gone wrong or a tragic accident. The official ruling of homicide by fentanyl toxicity frames this as a deliberate poisoning. Keir and Taylor are not accused of a violent struggle, but of using chemical submission as their weapon to facilitate robbery and assault, with a callous disregard for whether their victim lived or died. While they await their day in court, the facts allege a night of planned predation. The legal process will decide their guilt, but it cannot erase the terrifying reality for Christine Engelhardt that the people she partied with allegedly chose to poison her, violate her, and leave her body as they stole her possessions. Her death is a dark warning about the deadly dangers that can masquerade as friendship in a city built on temporary escapes. Case number 7. Adrian Cosby and George Walton. In April 2020, the craze for exclusive sneakers escalated to a point of fatal absurdity when a planned transaction became an armed ambush. The perpetrators were Adrian Cosby and George Walton. Their target was 18-year-old high school senior Andrea Campsleo. The object of the robbery: 3 pairs of Adidas Yeezy sneakers. What should have been a simple exchange in a Miami-Dade parking lot ended with Cosby firing a gun and Andrea Leo dying on the pavement over footwear. The setup was a familiar one in the modern marketplace, a meeting arranged through social media to buy and sell high-value sneakers. Andrea Leo arrived at the agreed location, the Hammocks Landing shopping plaza, expecting a sale. Instead, she was met by Cosby and Walton, who were there not to pay, but to steal. Walton provided the firearm to Cosby, who then approached the teenager and demanded the shoes. When Andrea Leo resisted, Cosby shot her. The young woman, on the cusp of her future, was killed for 3 pairs of shoes her assailants could have simply purchased. There was no complex mystery for police to solve. The shooting happened in a public plaza, and the digital trail from the social media arrangement led investigators directly to Cosby and Walton. Both were swiftly arrested. During their trials, the facts were laid bare. This was a premeditated armed robbery that resulted in murder. The courts convicted both individuals of first-degree murder and armed robbery. Their sentences ensure they will spend the rest of their lives in prison, a direct consequence of a decision to value property over human life. This case stands as a grim monument to a profoundly warped sense of value. Adrian Cosby and George Walton did not kill in a moment of passionate conflict or personal vendetta. They planned a theft and were prepared to use lethal force to complete it, all for consumer goods. Andrea Leo's life was measured against sneakers and found wanting by her killers. While the lifelong prison sentences deliver a form of justice, they cannot recalibrate that fatal calculus. Her death forces a disturbing question about the moment when desire for an object eclipses the basic sanctity of a human life. Leaving a family to mourn a promising future ended in a parking lot over something as trivial as trendy shoes. The trigger was pulled for Yeezys, and a young woman's world ended. Case number 8. YNW Melly, retrial update. The case of Jamal Maurice Demons, the rapper known as YNW Melly, returns not as a closed file, but as a looming second courtroom battle. As detailed in Case 5, Demons and Cortland Henry are accused of the execution-style murders of their 2 friends and fellow artists, Anthony Williams, YNW Juvie, and Christopher Thomas Jr., YNW Sock Chaser, in October 2018. The first trial ended in a mistrial in July 2023 after the jury deadlocked, unable to reach a unanimous verdict. This failure to convict has set the stage for a high-stakes legal replay. The core allegations remain unchanged. Prosecutors assert that Demons shot the 2 victims inside a Jeep Cherokee while Henry drove, after which they staged the scene to mimic a drive-by shooting. The defense maintains the duo's innocence, sticking to the story of an external assailant. The mistrial revealed a deep divide, not in the public, but within the jury room itself, proving the prosecution's case, built heavily on complex digital evidence and forensic reconstruction of the shooting, was compelling but not conclusively airtight for all 12 jurors. Now, the machinery of justice grinds toward a retrial. Both the defense and prosecution are recalibrating their strategies, analyzing the weaknesses exposed in the first proceeding. The state must find a way to present its technical evidence with even more clarity and force to secure the unanimous verdict it failed to achieve. The defense will seek to deepen the shadow of reasonable doubt. A conviction could mean life imprisonment or the death penalty for Demons. An acquittal would see a man accused of a double homicide walk free. This case remains a raw, open wound in the Florida legal system and the hip-hop community. It is a stark reminder that a mistrial is not an exoneration, but a reset. The families of the victims are forced to endure the trauma of the courtroom once more, waiting for a definitive answer that was denied to them the first time. The upcoming retrial of YNW Melly is not just about the fate of one rapper. It is a second attempt to answer the brutal, unresolved question at the heart of this tragedy. Who fired the shots inside that Jeep on that October night? And will a jury ever agree on the answer? The gavel has yet to fall.